Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Just a quick shout out to the T5 peeps: Bob the Dragon, Crab Lobster, Datamagnet, DuckMachine, Mezec, Try Again 95, Feudic Jarl, Astraya the Dreamer, Casper Arnholtz, Maxwell, Ithilia, Meridian 117, and Jordan Buxbaum. Thank you very much. A Gamble on Humanity, written by Bobcrusher. I didn't know my uncle very well. Among my family, he was known to be a remarkably solitary man. He was distant in my childhood and absent in my adulthood. It was for this reason that I was quite surprised when he asked for me to hear his deathbed confession. Until recently, he had served as a CEO of an influential investment firm that had held stakes in businesses across the globe. That changed last year when he developed a rare and untreatable cancer. Since then, he'd been confined to a long-term care wing of a private hospital, withering away under the helpless watch of the best doctors money could buy. It was in that very hospital I then found myself. My uncle was thin and pale as a ghost. He lay in a hospital bed, attached to all sorts of life support devices that served only to delay the inevitable. He didn't look at me when I entered the room. Instead, he continued to gaze out of his room's window that afforded a commanding view of New Yasagul's downtown core. "Sit down," my uncle said, turning his emaciated head to look at me. Despite his condition, his voice remained firm. I did as he told and sat in the guest chair in the corner of the room. "Is anyone else coming?" I asked. "Just you," my uncle replied. "Only one person needs to know." I fidgeted uncomfortably in my chair. "I brought chocolates," I said on a whim. "I have no appetite," he said bluntly. "I didn't ask you here for your chocolates or your sympathy. I've already said my piece to those that needed to hear it. All I need from you is your attention." "Oh, of course," I replied, putting the chocolates away and suddenly feeling quite silly. "I'm all ears." My uncle nodded, and then thought for a moment. "What do you know about the age of magic?" I was taken aback by this strange question, but quickly gathered my thoughts. "As much as anyone," I replied, trying to dredge up memories of long-forgotten history lessons. "It was a few hundred years ago, right? Back then, they magically gifted races had the run of things. And do you know how it ended?" "Because some rare celestial conjunction, the planets aligned and snuffed out the magic in our world. I think it calls the Dark Age, right?" My uncle paused for a moment, no doubt for dramatic effect. "It's a lie," he said. "That's not how the Age of Magic ended." "I don't understand," I said. Had the cancer rotted his brain to the point of madness? My uncle didn't skip a beat. "I'm going to tell you a secret. My great-aunt told it to me before she died, and before my time runs out, I intend to tell you." "Hold on," I said, now somewhat skeptical. "What does a family secret have to do with the Age of Magic?" My uncle shook his head. "Not just a family secret," he clarified. "This secret is all of ours, and we can't forget it. I won't let it die with me. It wouldn't be right." I looked into my uncle's eyes, searching for any hint that he had gone mad or was having one last laugh at my expense. I found none. "Fine," I said for a moment. "I'll listen." "Thank you," my uncle said. "Hear what I have to say, and then ask me whatever questions you have. All right?" "All right." My uncle took a ragged breath. "It all started in the Age of Magic. You have an ancestor, now long dead, who was a shipwright during the Age of Magic. He lived and worked in the city-state of Caprovi, one of the few independent human strongholds at the time. He made his fortune selling trawlers to the fishing guilds, a profitable business. By his middle age, he'd made his fortune and become a respectable man in Caprovi's high society. He could have stopped then, sold his workshops, and retired comfortably amongst the gentry. But he didn't, because he thought there was more to life than building fishing trawlers. So your ancestor set to work building a yacht like no other. It was built on the finest lumber to the highest standard and fitted to survive the ice storms of the far north, He sought to capture the ship and use it to brave the polar sea and chart a passage to the White Ocean. At the time, the existence of such a route had been rumored to exist for over 3 millennium, but in so many years, not one vessel had survived the Arctic storms and pack ice long enough to find it. Your ancestor thought that he would be different, that his ship would be the first to sail the polar sea and emerge intact. He was wrong. His ship became icebound after a fierce storm, stranded a world away from home. Your ancestor's crew was whittled away by starvation, disease, and the feral beasts that stalk the ice. A month passed before a naval schooner, crewed by Fae and sailing on a conjured wind, came across your ancestor's yacht. They rescued him and what was left of his men, then made flank speed to the nearest port. While the schooner dodged glaciers with the help of a clairvoyant, the skipper asked your ancestors a simple question. Why? Why try and do what the greatest sorcerers could not in a vessel built and crewed by mere men? Your ancestor didn't know the answer to that question until he was limping down the schooner's gangway into Koprovi. As he made his way to his estate, everyone who met his gaze, every longshoreman, merchant, nobleman, and farmer, wore the same hollow expression of abject defeat. It was only then that he saw that when he had sailed north, he had carried with him the hope of every human in Kapori, the hope that a long stagnant world could be changed by one of their own. He had broken that hope against the pack ice of the Arctic. For months, your ancestor stewed in his estate, contemplating the state of the world. Humans did not chart the seas because they could not conjure a wind. Humans did not practice medicine because herbs could not fuse bones like a spell. Humans did not wage wars because iron swords melted in the face of fireballs. Humans did not dream because magic made it seem so much easier not to. And so your ancestor concluded that only in a world without the convenience of magic could humans have a chance at greatness. Not a guarantee, mind you, just a chance. A chance your ancestor decided to gamble on. Your ancestor set to work climbing the rungs of high society such that he could be granted audiences with the rich and powerful. There, his theories found purchase in the minds of kings, warlords, and guildmasters. Those at the top understood all too well the limits magic placed on their ambitions. To them, the mere chance that a world order dictated by humans, by them, was intoxicating. Over the course of decades, a vast conspiracy against magic grew and festered in the high echelons of human society. Of course, rumors of its existence reached the knife ears of the magically gifted, but they paid little heed. It was a passing tantrum, they told themselves. Magic was all that made the humans' fleeting life bearable. To them, to rid the world of magic would be to cut off one's nose to spite one's face. A laughably self-destructive overreaction. In the complacence, they underestimated the blinding drive that a grain of hope could give the hopeless. When they least expected it, we struck. To rid the world of magic, it had to be cut off at the source. The threshold, the patch of porous reality in the White Ocean where magic flowed into our world from the ether. If it were to be destroyed, magic would soon follow. This, however, would be no easy task. The threshold was guarded by a nameless fortress carved from a volcanic rock and manned by the reclusive order of sorcerers. With this in mind, the conspiracy bided their time as they searched for a chink in the threshold's armor. After decades of patience and cunning, they found one. Just as the history books say, there was a planetary conjunction on the day magic died. What they do not say is that the confluence was the result of a meticulous planning aimed at sowing doubt and confusion. In truth, magic was ended in blood and iron. At the moment of alignment, a convoy of merchant vessels on the White Ocean broke away from its shipping lane and made best speed for the threshold. The convoy's cargo manifest claimed that it was hauling spices to remote island settlements, but in truth, it carried a mercenary army raised in secret at the cost of several city-state treasures. The vessels approached the nameless fortress under the flags of distress. The sorcerers, honorable as they were, allowed the apparent stricken merchant ships to moor themselves to the fortress's harbor. By the time they sensed the aura of bloodlust about the crew, it was too late. The mercenaries fell upon them like thunder. The sorcerers fought back valiantly, cutting large swaths in the mercenary formations with elegant battle magic. But their function was to protect our world from the horrors of the ether, and so they lacked any coherent strategy to combat the conspiracy's attack. I am certain that they died wondering how so many could want to live in a world without magic. They fought bravely, but even magic has no remedy for a sword in the gut. By noon, the halls of the nameless fortress ran red with blood. For the first time in history, humans held domain over the threshold. From that point on, the window to act was small. It was only a matter of time before the naval schooner happened upon the massacre and exacted revenge. The threshold had to be closed post-haste, but sealing a millennia-old breach in reality was not something that could be done by mere men. The conspiracy had planned for this. For years, their agents had kidnapped and imprisoned sorcerers familiar with the arcane workings of the threshold and subjected them to an unending regimen of psychological torture. After decades of trauma, their minds were shattered and pliable. On the day of conjunction, they were offered a bargain: enact a ritual to close the threshold and be rewarded with the release of death. They all agreed. The prisoners were escorted from the bowels of the mercenary flagship to seize the sky for the first and last time in decades, and then led to the heart of the nameless fortress. There they gathered about the threshold, that incorporeal gash in reality, and chanted a ritual in some prehistorical tongue. It went on for hours, with each word of the incantation causing the threshold to roil and dim. By sundown, it had vanished entirely. Magic was dead, and we had killed it. As the conspiracy had predicted, the world spiraled into chaos overnight. What else could have happened after tearing the foundation out from under a millennia-old world order? Nations burned, millions died, and anarchy reigned. Conspiracy agents took advantage of those early, confusing days to burn away evidence of humanity's involvement in the death of magic and shift blame onto the conjunction. No one could ever know who committed the greatest crime in history, least of all ourselves. This is all to provide a clean slate needed for a century-spanning bet on humanity. The conspiracy never got to see if they'd won their gamble. The dark age that followed the death of magic was brutal. Without magic, the gifted races were dragged down into the mud to fight tooth and nail for what little had survived the collapse. It was a century of ignorance, barbarism, and superstition in which violence was the only law. What remained of the conspiracy died during this time. Most ranking members were lynched during the Vicral present revolt. Many more were killed in the unending border wars. The few that survived kept their blood oaths and passed on the knowledge of humanity's crime as a family heirloom. Before your ancestor was killed during the sack of Koprovi, he passed the secret on to his son. For years, the secret has trickled down through our family by way of deathbed confessions. Now, it is your turn. When I realized my uncle had no more to say, all I could manage to blurt out was, "Why me?" My uncle broke eye contact and then, after a moment, sighed. "Because I couldn't bring myself to tell my own daughter," he explained. "I didn't call you here because you're special to me, but because you're not. It's no gift to live with the burden of the conspiracy's crime. Our crime." "You're insane," I said. It was the only explanation. I wish I hadn't lived with the burden of what we did. But someone had to. It wouldn't be right to forget. So no, I'm not insane. When you leave here today, go to my summer home and open up the safe in the library. The code is your cousin's birthday. Inside you'll find a stone imbued with a quart or so of magic. It was ejected from the threshold as it was destroyed. No other event could have produced such a mineral. It serves as proof of our crime." I chewed on this for a moment. In spite of myself, I believed him. Fine, I relented. But don't think I won't check. I'm sure you will. We sat in silence for a moment, my uncle gazing blankly at the window, and me, transfixed on his watery eyes. What happened next? I asked after a moment, my curiosity getting the better of me. What next? Well, what else? History. The HMS Lilac charts the Polar Sea. The Merm sisters take off in their flyer for the first time. The atom is split over Vaclaw and ends a 10-year war. The Zusalka 4 probe travels faster than light to an alien star. Humanity weathered the Dark Age. Maybe it was latent ingenuity or inherent savagery, but we clawed our way into enlightenment and the magically gifted did not. I considered this. So then, it was worth it? I asked. The gamble paid off. You tell me. I followed my uncle's gaze out the window and took in New Yesagral, the city of the world. Self-sustaining arcologies dominated the cityscape. Elevated vacuum trains ripped out of Yesagral's central station, bound for the west coast. Autonomous multi-rotors carrying everything from fast food to police sensor pods dodged between skyscrapers. On the horizon, a heavy-lipped spacecraft streaked skyward. Sure looks like it to me, I remarked. It sure looks that way, my uncle agreed. But the gamble isn't over yet, and it will never be. I furrowed my brow. How do you mean? Magic was a safety net. It kept the world boring, but a safe place. When we destroyed the threshold, we decided to go it alone for the sake of living in interesting times. If we failed, magic can't catch our fall. By our design, we live in a world with no spell to reverse climate change, to decontaminate nuclear fallout, or to stop a pandemic. We live on a knife's edge. That's a dire way of looking at it, I grimaced. I'm dying on that very knife. Medical science can do nothing for me, but cancers of my sort were easily cured during the age of magic, and I'm not the only one. So many millions, humans and otherwise, have suffered and died for this gamble to be made, for the world to be an interesting place. It's your job to not forget them. It's all of our jobs to make sure that it was worth it. Do you understand? I thought it over for a moment, and then I said, I do. Good, my uncle said, flashing a thin grin on his. Now get out of here, go live your life, and for me and for everyone like me, make it an interesting one. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.